Okay guys, Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. Let's talk about it because in my heart, I do not feel like that this fight has any chance of actually happening, and I'll tell you why. So far, Jon Jones has become the highest selling pay-per-view of 2023, and if UFC 290 doesn't deliver in a big way, I don't see a reason why that should change. So that means that Jon Jones is going to be asking for a lot of money, and naturally, because Jon Jones is asking for a lot of money, Stipe Miocic is going to be asking for a lot of money for a number of reasons. Number one, he's going to be throwing up his entire legacy, which you have to imagine at his point of view, he's currently the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. If he loses to Jon Jones, which he most likely will, he's throwing all of that away. So he can now bank the rest of his life on doing coaching, speeches, appearances, as the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time, or lose all that and have to cash it out for one big payday. And after seeing the numbers that Jon Jones versus Cyril Gane did, I don't think the UFC believe that Stipe Miocic is actually worth all that much. I think they know that Jon Jones is the draw, and that they could convince Jon Jones to fight Sergey Pavlovich for half the price of a Stipe Miocic and still make the same money off it. Now look, good on Stipe Miocic. He has done a great job at keeping his name relevant, especially for a man that speaks no English. Well done. But I think it's time for the UFC to move on from him. I don't think the fans care about a Jon Jones Stipe Miocic fight that much, and they just want to see Jon Jones fighting at heavyweight to see how he's going to take on these one-punch knockout power guys. And what also makes this very interesting for Jon Jones is that I believe in his heart, he thinks he can beat Sergey Pavlovich, and then he is on the cusp of gaining another UFC title fight win. One more puts him up there with the greatest, two more makes him the greatest, and when you look at the state of heavyweight, Jon Jones can do that. Jon Jones can set himself up to be the youngest UFC champion of all time, the oldest UFC champion of all time, the light heavyweight GOAT, and the heavyweight GOAT, all at the same time, right now in his career. He doesn't need Stipe to make that happen. Stipe would certainly help and be a nice head on his mantelpiece, but Jon Jones can just roll along and get these things happening. And I think he should. I think the UFC need to press Stipe Miocic and be like, you have got till the end of July to sign this deal, or we're moving on with Pavlovich. And then we'll move on with Aspinall after that. And then we'll move on with Blades after that. Jon Jones can keep calling these people up. And I'll tell you why, even though Blades just lost his last fight, Jon Jones can still call up Curtis Blades. His name is Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero. Romero was not in the position to get the title fight against Israel Adesanya, but Izzy called him up. The fans accepted it because Izzy sold it as a fight that would be challenging enough for him and one that the fans wanted to see, so we went ahead with it. The same thing is true of Curtis Blades at heavyweight against Jon Jones. Curtis Blades is still one of the best wrestlers at heavyweight, and everyone is going to wonder, how does Jon Jones's wrestling go against a heavyweight wrestler? So, if Jon Jones wrestles his way through Pavlovich, he can easily call out Curtis Blades, even though Curtis Blades doesn't exactly deserve a title shot. That sort of precedent has been set before in the game. And there you go, you've got 3 title fight wins for Jon Jones. Not only that, he beat the old era when he was the youngest champ, the up-and-coming era, the new era of light heavyweight, which is now the old era of light heavyweight, and then he goes and does it again at heavyweight. I know that Jon Jones is a filthy, filthy drug cheat and a wife beater, but when it comes to the game of MMA, even I would have to admit that Jon Jones would absolutely be the GOAT. It just got my mind rolling on this, guys. Do you actually believe that the Jones-Stipe fight is really ever going to happen? Because I don't see a world where it actually does. And if it didn't happen, do you really care that much? Is it just Jon Jones versus heavyweight in general that is the draw these days? Because if we remember, back in the day at light heavyweight, Jon Jones was not a draw anymore. Everyone just assumed that he would win, even though he did technically lose his last 2 fights, not on paper. But if you watch them, he sort of lost his last 2 fights. Suddenly, Jon Jones's career is revitalized and interesting again. So let me know down in the comments, guys. Is Jon Jones versus Stipe ever going to happen? If it does, do you really care? Do you just want to see Jon Jones move forward? And if Jon Jones called out Curtis Blaydes, would that be a fair call out? Would you be happy to see that fight? As always, very interested to hear your thoughts. I'll see you in the next video.